What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel, and in today's video we're going to be doing a London Bulldogs update here in the RFL. If you guys haven't been keeping up with the London Bulldogs, make sure you guys follow the RFL on YouTube and on social media, as well as the London Bulldogs pages on social media, and keep up with everything that's going on with the RFL. We are now heading into week 7 of RFL season 7 here, and there's a lot of interesting things happening within the league. There's a lot of interesting stuff to keep up with, and certainly worth your time and investment into a league like this, even if you're just going to be a fan. You can also create a player and you can apply to be a coach, so there's a lot to do in this league, and it's extremely fun. It's one of the best leagues, if not the best league that I've ever been a part of. And in today's video I just wanted to go ahead and recap you on some things that are going on with the London Bulldogs, what's happened with our team so far, and what our season looks like moving forward. The first thing that I want to point out clearly here on the screen is that we are sitting at 5-1, and you'll see down at the bottom of the screen the ARC standings, as we call them here in the RFL, because everything is relocated. In the ARC East, currently the Bulldogs sit on top at 5-1. The Sentinels are sitting at 4-2, and they just got a win over us last week in week 6. The Celtic Tigers, who are the defending Reload Bowl champions, are coming in at 2-3 to this week, and the London Black Knights are sitting at 1-4. Another quick note while we're on this screen, you definitely want to pay attention to our team overall. So if you've been paying attention to this team as we've been building them up for the past couple of seasons, this team got all the way down maybe to around an 82, possibly even an 80 overall. I remember specifically an 83 overall when I think we took this team over. We made a bunch of moves in order to get this team turned back around to a younger, more competitive state, and our roster is now up to an 87 overall in all categories. You guys can see there in the middle of the screen by the Bulldogs logo, we are an 87 offense, 87 defense, and an 87 overall. So the roster is looking really nice. We'll get a closer look at that in a moment, but definitely want to point out that the team has come a long way since we've been coaching them. Now let's go ahead and recap what's been happening with the roster, or where we stand with the roster currently. You can see that a lot of players are going to be having the temporary boosts over their overalls and things like that. So remember to factor that in when we're taking a look at these players. So a lot of these offensive linemen are 3 overall lower than what their overalls actually showing, for example. We definitely want to keep that in mind when we're looking at these things, but I feel that we have set our team in a very, very good position to be competitive for years to come. And first and foremost, we wanted to build up our offensive line so that we could effectively run and pass the football. So veterans that were here on this team whenever we took over would be Jake Moffett, for example, our left tackle, who is an 82 overall. He's a very versatile offensive lineman. He can run block well, he can pass block well, and he's going to be around for multiple years. We just re-signed him to a multi-year contract, and same thing for our other tackle, Jason McBride, who's an 82 overall, also a very versatile offensive lineman for the most part, and he just got re-signed to a multi-year deal. So both of our tackles that are pretty solid overalls have been locked up on contracts for a while, probably into their 30s if I'm not mistaken for both of them. And then Lee Corona, who was very young, potentially a rookie or a second-year player whenever we took over this team, now 24 years old, is an 81 overall, and he's been looking really good for us. He's more of a power blocker type of a player, and that's why he works really well as a center or an interior offensive lineman. Center guard, he can play both, and he has played both when Richard Porter was our starting center, another offensive lineman that is a veteran. He's now 30 years old, and we may be looking to re-sign him to a 1-year deal, but nonetheless, those are the veterans coming over. And last year, we were fortunate enough to be able to pick up Damian Hickman, who was moved off of another team, I think released due to salary cap situations, so we were able to pick him up. He's now a 79 overall superstar, and he's looking like he's going to be a very, very good lineman, maybe a Pro Bowl caliber lineman for years to come. And when you get that superstar development on a lineman, it is so few and far between. It's so hard to come by, and we covet that tremendously here on the Bulldogs. And then we did trade away our first-round pick for Demetrius Higgins. This guy's a monster, and the reason that we traded away this pick is because linemen are very hard to come by. Good linemen are very hard to come by in the RFL, and there's some very unique things that Demetrius Higgins has that a lot of other linemen don't offer. Number one, he's 24 years old, so he still does have years to develop, and he'll be around for a long time for us. We extended his contract, so he's not going anywhere. We traded him and signed him, but he's 6'9", 365 pounds, so he has very, very unique size for an offensive lineman, and that does play a part in Madden. You know, it may play a bigger part in future years if they get some of their things figured out with coding and whatnot. A player's size could be tremendously important to their ability within the game, and getting a 24-year-old that's that big is absolutely tremendous. Now, his blocking abilities are also pretty solid. He's got pretty solid run blocking and pass blocking abilities. He's pretty strong as a lineman, but the thing that I like the most out of this guy is his athleticism that pairs with his size and blocking ability. When you get a lineman that has 72 speed, 85 acceleration, 81 agility, 96 stamina, all of that combined with good blocking skills and an elite size, you can't pass that up. We had to make a offer for this guy. We were able to bring him in, and that's the final piece to the puzzle on the offensive line. Obviously, some of these guys have some development still to go. I mean, these three in the middle are 23, 24, 24 years old. They're going to keep developing, and our tackles on the outside, they flip-flop sometimes. Sometimes they go left, sometimes they go right, depending on what we're going up against, and I think that this line is going to be solid for the Bulldogs for years to come, and that is going to be key to doing anything on the offensive side of the ball. Next up, let's quickly talk about the tight end position. We did move on from our veteran Ben Hartman in a trade, and so we have right now Reggie Streeter, Thomas McDonald, and Jones here. Brandon Jones, I believe his name is, that are playing tight end for us. Brandon Jones doesn't get a lot of time, but we were looking to get more time for Thomas McDonald, and we were ultimately looking for Reggie Streeter to take over as the starting tight end because we used a first-round pick on him 2 years ago. So Reggie Streeter has now taken over as the starting tight end for this team, and he's actually contributed pretty well to this team so far this season. 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, not phenomenal numbers for a tight end, but very solid. So we look for him to continue his development and maybe eventually take a huge leap forward. And then the next thing to talk about would then be the wide receiving core, which really hasn't changed too much. I mean, if you've followed the Bulldogs since we've taken over, and you know, even before that, they've had Saul Leckie and Stanley Whitehead, these top 2 wide receivers, you know, hanging around on the team. And both of them are doing well for us this season. Saul Leckie is actually having a career year, but unfortunately we got one of those scenarios that gives like -60 morale or something. He was leading our team in receiving, 443 yards so far, 4 touchdowns. Please disregard the previous season stats because we do move from one Madden to the next. So obviously those, you know, previous season stats are not correct. Those are off of a player that we built these guys over, because that's what we have to do year to year, is build these teams in the future. So, you know, our receiving core, our top 2 are looking solid as veterans. Unfortunately, Saul Leckie getting some negatives due to that odd morale thing that's going on there. So that's reducing his medium route, deep route, and spectacular catch, which really aren't the worst things to get reduced. His catching is still very good. His short route running is very good. His, you know, athleticism didn't go down or anything like that, but you certainly do have to take into account that he is getting some negatives there. And then we also have the rookie here, Jake Winkleman, who is getting a good bit of time in our receiving game. We drafted him with, I think, the 11th overall pick this year, 97 speed receiver. He's got pretty solid size at 6'2". He's only 21 years old, star development, pretty good catching, pretty good deep route running. We're looking to round out his skills, get him involved a little bit more. So you might see him involved in various different ways in the offense, but that does take some time away from Anthony Connell, who is a player that we do want to get time for. He's 6'4", 23 years old, 93 speed, pretty good catching and pretty good route running. This is a guy that I do like to get involved in the offense quite a bit. So unfortunately, the addition of Jake Winkleman definitely does take away some time from Anthony Connell, but nonetheless, when you have that problem, that's a good problem to have. We have a lot of receivers that we want to get the ball to, and you know, some of these guys like Saul Leckie are aging, and eventually those guys are going to take over for them nonetheless, because Saul Leckie's 31 years old. So you definitely have to have those guys waiting in the wings, and that's what we tried to do with this draft, was draft some players that are definitely going to take over for us within the next few seasons. And then we move on to the running back and fullback position. I showed you guys that Thomas McDonald has been playing fullback for us. We do get some fullback contributions out of our other backup tight end and our other running back, Jay Morris. Matt Wheaton, though, leads the way for us as a running back, and we do a mixture of carries between Vic Cage, Jay Morris, and Matt Wheaton. We brought in Corian Brown in preseason free agency to help back up this offense. This is a guy that might not be that well known, but he's 6'5", 225, and only 23 years old. He's got 90 trucking, 90 speed, 92 acceleration, so I think that he's going to be a very serviceable backup if he comes into games. But we added in the offseason Jay Morris, who has been contributing for us so far this season. Hasn't gotten a huge workload, but certainly has earned a pretty solid role in the offense as a third down type of a back. And then Vic Cage has also been getting work as a third down back. Those guys kind of split those reps. He's got the special statistic of 98 speed, but that 86 acceleration. So he's another very interesting player as well to complement. But nonetheless, Matt Wheaton is the staple here for the offense, and he is proving it so far this season. 24 years of age, 622 rushing yards so far on the season through 6 games, 7 rushing touchdowns. You can see that he's averaging over 100 yards per game, and that's the game plan coming into this season, is to run the football. We have the offensive line to do it. We have faith in our tight ends to help us out in the run game, and we have faith in our quarterback to manage the game and pass it off to his very good wide receivers. And so that takes some of the pressure off of our quarterback here, Timmy Merritt, and allows Matt Wheaton to really eat most of the reps in the game. Timmy Merritt has been playing well this season. He is now up to a 90 overall. So for those of you that are RFL fans, a little bit of a applause here for Timmy Merritt finally joining the 90 club. Unfortunately, not a superstar player. It would benefit him probably to have superstar abilities, but unfortunately, he's one of those quarterbacks that's a high overall that just doesn't have superstar. So, we just have to work with what we got, and he has pretty solid ratings across the board here. I think that he's done well so far for us this season. Taking a look at his stats real quick, you can see that he has 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Obviously, he's not lighting it up, and like I said, ignore these prior stats because those aren't necessarily accurate. Those are a player that we built him over, but very, very solid season for him so far. 108.7 passer rating, 13-3 touchdowns to interceptions is pretty solid. To have a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, I'll take that any day of the week. Hopefully, we can continue that throughout the season, but really, that's what our offense is looking like so far. I think that it's built to last, honestly. I think that we have a lot of key contributors that are effective right now, and we have guys that are going to be very effective in the future. So this team is really built to contend now on the offensive side of the ball. However, the strength of our team so far this season, and the strength of our team probably for the future, is going to be our defense. Coming over from last year, we had Jack Brodine at the defensive tackle position. Willis Savage, who had a very solid season, is at defensive end. And opposite him is Drew Brewer, who was the first-round pick 2 drafts ago. Drew Brewer now up to an 89 overall and having a very solid season so far. The big addition here was Jermaine Taylor on the inside, 82 overall superstar D-tackle now, and he helps to get pressure on the quarterback, and it's very difficult for any offensive line to be able to block all 4 of these guys. And that's been one of the key goals since I took over this team, was to generate more pressure with our defensive line. We need guys that can pressure quarterbacks and prevent them from sitting back there all day and having anybody to throw to that they want to and getting guys open. And so we've done that with our defensive line, but more so than that, we also had to focus on revamping our secondary a little bit so that we could get guys out there that can lock down cover and get our defensive line more opportunities to get to the quarterback, because the coverage isn't going to be broken quite as much. So Shaquille Tiller and Isaac Lockhart, who we've been working to develop, are out here on the outside. Isaac Lockhart has been playing phenomenal for us this season. He's a very interesting player because he was a safety at one point in time, now converted to cornerback. 6'2", 24 years old, very athletic. He's the type of cornerback that I absolutely love to have on my team. He's a phenomenal starter for this team, opposite of Shaquille Tiller, who is the rookie that we drafted 2 years ago. And then we have Matthew Hall, who gets significant playing time, who was a off-season trade coming over, is going to help out this team tremendously. And that's really just how our cornerbacks shake out right now. It's those 3 that are getting the primary playing time. There's nothing here that has changed drastically from the off-season or the last video that I made here on this team, just more so that these players are playing really well and cohesive as a unit. And it's absolutely worth mentioning that Isaac Lockhart, even though we were defeated last week by the Sentinels, did win ARC Defensive Player of the Week. 6 tackles for him, 2 interceptions, and one of those returned for a touchdown. He had a phenomenal week for us. He's been phenomenal for us so far all season. He's been very locked down and been very effective in coverage. So I'm really liking what our secondary's been able to do, but that's not all in our secondary. We haven't even mentioned our safeties yet, who have been maybe the strongest part of our defense so far, because this is the biggest difference from last season. Last season we started Ike Page, and I think it might have been Ronell Crosby, who was around an 80 overall at free safety. So we've seen major upgrades here in the offseason and preseason free agency through trades and whatnot by bringing in Jacoby Haskins via trade. So we now have an 88 overall X Factor free safety, and then Brandon Oliver, the 83 overall superstar strong safety, coming over from the Black Knights. They're a fantastic duo back there. They're both big hitters. They're both able to keep us in games. They're both able to prevent anything deep happening over the top. They've been crucial for us. We also signed 79 overall free safety Amari Dunbar, who's an X Factor. So we have that really nice depth going on at that safety position, and we really have depth going on everywhere. The final position to talk about here is the linebacker spot, where we have Duke Pascal, the free agent from the offseason, who's been leading the way, and you can see a noticeable difference with our defense because of him. He is so good at run stopping. He's so good at pursuing, finding the ball carrier, and shutting things down before it has a chance to break out and become worse. And that's really the story of this defense, is they not only do they do a good job of covering and getting pressure on the quarterback, but they do a really good job with how athletic they are of preventing extra yardage. And that's one of my biggest points as a coach taking over this team, is we need to have that athleticism to prevent extra yardage. If you're in position to make a tackle, you need to be able to make the tackle. If you're too slow to make that tackle, then you're not doing your job. You know, you're allowing extra yardage, and that hurts you as a team. So we're doing a really good job so far this season of limiting those extra yards after a catch or after contact and things like that. And that's mainly because of Duke Pascal, I would say. Shane Masters has been very effective next to him. And then we have the veteran Greg Davidson, who's been getting a lot of playing time over here, 73 overall X Factor, that's been doing really well for us. And then Ronnie Santiago is plugging in at those positions pretty much anytime anybody subs out. Ronnie Santiago might take over that outside linebacker spot at some point, but we'll see what happens as we move forward. That's really where our defense stands in terms of personnel. And let's go ahead and maybe take a look at a few stats real quick. So on defense here, I just wanted to point out that Duke Pascal has 47 tackles for us on the season. You can tell the impact that he has had, and Brandon Oliver himself has 40. So you can immediately see the impact there, and it's also very nice to see the bounce back season from Drew Brewer, already up to 5 sacks, which is well ahead of his total from last season. He didn't get his first sack until week 16 or something like that, so he's been doing very well, and you can always feel his presence. Jermaine Taylor is up to 3 sacks as a rookie defensive tackle, so I'll take that all day long. We've been getting very good production out of those young players, and as a unit, like I said, they're playing really well. I think that's one of the main things that you see when you see a Bulldogs game, is the defense just plays well as a cohesive unit. You see every single player on the field doing their job. There's not really any massive breakdowns in coverage or assignments or anything like that, and that's really been the strength of our team so far, and hopefully will be the strength of our team for years to come. On the ARC side, we do have the #1 defense so far, and we have had the #1 defense pretty much all season so far. Now, it doesn't show #1 in terms of total yardage yet, because the Celtic Tigers did have a bye week. You can see that they're 2-3, so they've only played 5 games, whereas we've played 6 games. So 1,478 yards is really, really impressive whenever you consider that that's, ahead of basically everybody in the league by at least 100 yards, and we've played all 6 games so far. So the team is doing phenomenal, and you can see that we're doing a good job of forcing turnovers, which is one of the main points that I was emphasizing whenever I took over this team, is this team needs to be able to force pressure, it needs to be able to force turnovers, and they've done that so far with 2 fumble recoveries and 8 interceptions. Ultimately, our goal this season is to get this team back to contention, get this team back to the playoffs, And hopefully once we get there, if we get there, we're going to have a shot at maybe contending for a reload bowl. That's going to be the next goal beyond getting us back to the playoffs, but we need to get ourselves back to the playoffs. Our 5-1 start to the season is a good way to go. It's a good start for that, and hopefully we can continue those winning ways and get ourselves into the playoffs, and hopefully we can secure this division. Nonetheless, you can see there on the right side, our season goal is set to make the playoffs. So that's the goal for us. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this update, get to seeing some of what the Bulldogs are all about and what we got going on with the roster, so you can actually see what's happening on paper. But make sure you guys are subscribed to the RFL. Make sure you guys are paying attention to all of the updates and everything like that, and follow us on social media. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one, and I hope you guys have a good one.